Standing across from him was Zohran Mamdani, a progressive politician known for his outspoken views and his willingness to challenge authority, even when doing so carries real political risk. His posture was respectful, yet firm, an intentional balance that signaled seriousness without hostility. He did not shift uneasily or glance around the room. He did not appear nervous, nor did he seem intimidated by the setting or by the man seated before him, a former president accustomed to command and confrontation. Mamdani stood grounded, aware of the power dynamics at play, yet unwilling to let them silence him. His reputation preceded him. Mamdani is widely known as someone who speaks plainly, even when plain speech invites backlash. He is not a politician who hides behind vague language or carefully polished phrases. Instead, he believes that democracy requires clarity, courage, and honesty, especially when questions are uncomfortable. In his view, avoiding difficult conversations does not protect democracy, it weakens it. That belief was visible not just in what he said, but in how he carried himself. He wasn't there to provoke outrage or generate headlines. He was there to engage power directly. The contrast between the two figures was striking. It wasn't merely about age or political ideology, though those differences were obvious. It was about what they symbolized in the broader political landscape. Donald Trump represented a style of leadership built on dominance, disruption, and personal authority. His rise reshaped American politics by rejecting traditional norms and embracing confrontation. Mamdani, by contrast, represented a new generation of political voices. One that grew up amid economic instability, social movements, and declining trust in institutions. On the other side of the room, Mamdani stood as a younger voice of progressive politics, shaped by a world very different from the one that produced Trump's rise. This generation has lived through financial crises, widening inequality, and social unrest. They have watched systems fail to protect the most vulnerable and have learned to question structures that previous generations accepted as fixed. For them, respect for authority is not automatic, it must be earned. Mamdani's politics focus heavily on social justice, economic reform, and challenging entrenched systems that he and his supporters believe benefit a small minority at the expense of the many. Issues like housing affordability, healthcare access, labor rights, and racial equity are not abstract ideals to him, they are lived realities affecting millions. He argues that economic systems should serve people, not the other way around, and that democracy loses its meaning when large segments of society feel permanently excluded from opportunity. Where Trump emphasizes strength through dominance and disruption, Mamdani emphasizes strength through accountability and collective responsibility. Trump's approach centers on decisive action and personal authority, often framing politics as a contest between winners and losers. Mamdani's approach frames politics as a shared project, one that requires cooperation, transparency, and systems designed to protect everyone, especially minorities and dissenters. This philosophical divide was present in the room long before any words were spoken. Trump's presence carried the confidence of someone who has been at the center of global attention for years. Mamdani's presence carried the determination of someone who believes that power must be challenged, not feared. One commanded the room by default, the other earned attention through intent. When the tension reached its peak, Trump didn't explode. He didn't raise his voice or storm out. Instead, he paused. That pause alone spoke volumes. In a political culture conditioned to expect instant reactions, especially from a figure known for sharp retorts, the silence felt deliberate. It signaled calculation, not confusion. Trump appeared acutely aware of the cameras, the audience in the room, and the millions who would later watch clips of the exchange. The pause became a moment of collective focus. Everyone present understood that this was no longer a routine exchange. It was a moment where restraint itself carried meaning. Trump's silence demonstrated his instinct for controlling the tempo of an interaction, for deciding when and how to respond. It reminded observers that power is often exercised not only through words, but through timing. Importantly, Mamdani did not accuse. He did not repeat the word that had sparked the tension. He did not push the exchange into personal confrontation. Instead, he reframed the issue as a shared responsibility. This choice was deliberate and strategic. By doing so, he shifted the conversation away from individuals and toward principles. He spoke about the responsibility to protect democratic norms regardless of who holds office. A responsibility that does not disappear when elections are won. A responsibility that belongs not just to presidents or politicians, but to citizens as well. In Mamdani's framing, democracy is not something handed down by leaders, it is something maintained by constant participation and vigilance. This reframing widened the scope of the moment. It was no longer about whether one leader deserved a particular label. It became about the health of democratic systems themselves. Mamdani emphasized that loyalty to democracy means loyalty to rules, institutions, and rights, not loyalty to personalities. That message resonated with viewers who worry that modern politics has become too focused on individuals and too disconnected from principles. By refusing to escalate, Mamdani demonstrated a different form of political courage. He showed that it is possible to challenge power without hostility, to ask difficult questions without turning them into personal attacks. His approach suggested that accountability does not require anger. And finally, there is democracy itself. Democracy is often spoken of as if it were permanent, stable, and self-sustaining. But history offers countless examples proving otherwise. Democracies can weaken. They can erode slowly, through neglect, apathy, or the normalization of rule-breaking. They survive only when people actively defend them. Democracy requires constant effort. It requires engagement from citizens who are willing to pay attention, to ask questions, and to hold leaders accountable. It requires courage, the courage to speak when silence feels safer, and the courage to listen when disagreement feels uncomfortable. It demands debate, disagreement, and sometimes tension. Comfort is not its goal. Freedom is. The moment between Trump and Mamdani made that reality visible. It showed democracy not as an abstract idea, but as a living process unfolding in real time. It lived in the pause before a response. It lived in the decision not to accuse, but to reframe. It lived in the willingness to stand across from power and speak plainly. This encounter did not resolve political divisions. It did not change minds overnight. But it did something perhaps more important. It reminded people what democracy looks like when it is functioning. It looks like disagreement without collapse. It looks like questioning without chaos. It looks like tension managed through dialogue rather than force.